We are starting now. Today is 219th Friday group meeting. The topic is ESG, the futuristic law. ESG means environment, social governance. The speaker is our young Friday group member, Ramisha Jain. Thank you, Ramisha. You immediately reacted and so nice of you. Before start you speak, I request Madhu Yadav will say few things about your CV. Madhu, please.
Good afternoon, respected seniors and members of the bar. Ramisha ma'am is highly esteemed figure whose reputation precedes them. I am reviving their CV just to fulfill the formalities. Her achievements speaks for themselves. Ma'am have done her BLLB from Amity Law School, Noida. She has been a member of Legal Aid Committee, Bar Council of Delhi. Apart from that, she has also received a lot of awards, including she received first silver medal for second rank in batch CGPA 9.19. She was also awarded 100% merit scholarship for academic year 2014 to 19. Also 100% merit scholarship for CS Foundation and merit scholarship for CS executive level AIR 23 in CS Foundation. Ma'am had a lot of time being a very legal professional. She has received multiple scholarships. She was also awarded the best business acumen and awareness. Ma'am has worked in the chambers of Mr. Jasbir Singh, who has been the former chairman of Bar Council of Delhi, and also in the chambers of Miss Anusha Nagarajan, former DAG of Punjab. Later, Ma'am established her independent practice, especially in ESG and corporate advisory. She represented high-profile clients including EIL and former Chief Minister of Punjab. She had also advised on international transactions and IPOs. As a prolific writer, she has also contributed to publications on ESG and corporate law, ghostwritten a book on climate change policy and authorized articles on platforms like ET Energy World. Her commitment to the legal community is evident through her practices and roles as a speaker and judge at prestigious events, which includes National Consumer Day, Philippines JESEP International Moot Court Competition. Ma'am's journey represents her dedication and passion for law, inspiring many legal professionals. Let's welcome Ma'am to deliver her insightful lecture on topic ESG, the futuristic law.
Thank you, Madhu. These are huge claps. Ramisha, please this.
A very good afternoon to one and all present here. It is a matter of utmost honor and privilege to have been invited to address this Friday group. I thought it would take another 20 years to get here, but thank you. I would really like to extend my heartfelt thanks to you, sir, for having trusted basically a 5-year-old, I'd rather say, with something like this. And I hope I'm able to share something new and interesting with everyone present here. I'm also grateful to the senior members of the legal fraternity who have offered their inputs and guidance. Before, one thing I just wanted to correct, I have not represented the Chief Minister of Punjab, they're the elected representatives, so it's a different matter. Also, disclaimer, this session is not exactly going to be the ones that we've always experienced with the Friday group. Since the topic that I'm about to speak on, it's basically a growing practice, another different vertical of law altogether. Instead of the usual sessions where we have a legal issue and we have the existing judicial precedents and we discuss about the same. I shall begin by introducing ESG. Then we shall travel through the history of ESG, its importance, the way ESG exists today, and lastly, its future and the role of lawyers. What is ESG? If we go by the fissioned approach, simple: environment, social, governance. Climate change has brought the E aspect into the perspective. The pre-existing corporate social responsibility ensured the continued existence of S. And the corporate scandals across the globe, they gave birth to the G aspect. In the fusioned approach, it is much more, it is much beyond what is generally understood. ESG at its core is a means by which the companies can be evaluated with respect to a broad range of socially desirable ends. It basically describes a set of factors to measure the non-financial aspects. Like for instance, when we speak about corporates, we are measuring their turnover, how much dividend they're offering. But there is much more beyond it, which is what forms part of the ESG, and that is what helps in investments and companies to expand the economy on a large scale. At the same time, ESG also offers a range of businesses and investment opportunities. Law is one amongst them. To understand ESG, we have to look at its history first. ESG lies at the root of responsible investment. In the 1970s, there was a concept of socially responsible investing which was rapidly gaining ground. I'm pretty sure some of us must have heard it as SRIs. And it was basically expected that the investors should align their portfolios to SRIs, and that concept has sort of now evolved to CSR, corporate social responsibility. However, it was not until the 1990s that the ESG considerations started to form a part of the mainstream investment strategies. Of course, it began in US, as do usual things mostly. Then came 1998. There was a famous jurist and author by the name of John Elkington. He came up with the concept of triple bottom line. It says people, planet and profit. So the simple perspective when we come to this is that yes, let the companies grow, but with them the society should grow, that is people. The planet, because that was the time when there was Kyoto Protocol, then there was Stockholm conferences again, Montreal Protocol, Vienna, and that is when the concept of sustainable development was also gaining ground. So they said you grow, but everybody around you should grow, and you should not basically sacrifice people or the planet for the purpose of maximization of profit. These days, ESG is considered a compliance burden, but the idea is that you have to tap whatever is available to maximize your profits. And lawyers, we help in maximizing that profit. In 2000, the United Nations hosted the world leaders in New York, where the Millennium Development Goals were born. In 2004, this was when the term ESG was coined. There was a report by the UN Secretary General, had also read it out. Who cares wins. Something interesting, that whoever is going to care is going to win. I'll explain this as we go on forward. And that is how ESG became official. Now this begs the question, but why do we need ESG? So this was something very well explained by the BlackRock CEO. It's the biggest investment company in the world. He says, society is demanding that companies, both public and private, serve a social purpose. To prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society. Companies must benefit all their stakeholders, including shareholders, employees, customers, and the communities in which they operate. He goes on to say that companies must ask themselves, what role do we play in the community? How are we managing our impact on the environment? Are we working to create a diverse workforce? Are we adapting to technological change? Are we providing the retraining and opportunities that our employees and our business will need to adjust to an increasingly automated world? Are we using behavioral finance and other tools to prepare workers for retirement so that they benefit in a way that will help them achieve their goals? ESG is important because it helps in identifying and managing risks, improving the social responsibility, enhancing the long-term sustainability, and meeting the stakeholder expectations. Navigating and complying with regulation. This is the very basis of ESG to improve access to capital. What are the benefits of ESG? A strong ESG proposition helps the companies in tapping new markets and expanding into existing ones. Now, how ESG is also going to benefit lawyers by this tapping of markets, that I will deal towards the very end once we've had a basic understanding of the concept of ESG. For example, when the governing authorities, they trust the corporate actors, they're more likely to provide them with access, approvals and licenses. I think this is something that we are all debating in the courts, that, why were they provided tender, this tender should be cancelled, and the Supreme Court continuously says that, policy actions are not to be interfered with. So this is what ESG also takes into consideration. ESG can help reduce costs substantially. How? For example, when you have resource efficiency, your costs in the long term will ultimately drop. McKinsey says the ESG compliant companies have observed 60% drop in cost. A stronger external value proposition can enable the companies to achieve greater strategic freedom, easing the regulatory pressure. Basically, there are watchdogs that are hounding over the companies. SEBI is watching their every move. If you're ESG compliant, then of course they'll also give you a breathing space. A strong ESG proposition can help companies in attracting and retaining quality employees. We often hear that this company is facing high iteration rate. It becomes a labor law matter. If you're ESG compliant, that means you're taking care of your employees. They're happy. They're being upskilled. So once again, and this is positively correlated with the shareholder returns. It all comes down to money. A strong ESG proposition can enhance the investment returns by allocating capital to more promising and more sustainable opportunities. For example, a transition to renewable energy, waste reduction. I'll give an example. For example, there's a company X. It is ESG compliant. Its ESG rating is high. Yes, now we also have the concept of ESG rating. For example, like we have Moody's rating countries and companies, then we have your credit ratings. Simply there is ESG rating. So coming back, if ESG rating is high, it means that you're not prone to litigation, you're not prone to frauds. Hence, more people will purchase your shares, and that will lead to the growth of the company and increased returns to the shareholders. A good circular flow of money with everyone benefiting. People, planet, and profit. Now, how does ESG exist today, in what form and manner? The basis of any law is compliance and reporting. When something is required to be done or not to be done, that is how a law is born. For instance, we have a securities laws, taxation, company, environmental, labor laws, and the criminal laws. So is the case with ESG. There are numerous ESG regulations in play. Some are old and some are new. However, as once I was just discussing with Rahul sir also, it all begins with compliance. Nowadays, companies, especially the large corporates, are expected to do ESG reporting in their annual reports. India too has a compliance mechanism. The national guidelines on responsible business conduct, they have been devised by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, following which the business responsibility and sustainability reporting format has been introduced by SEBI. It is compulsory for the top 1,000 listed companies to report the same along with their annual reports. Now, if these 1,000 companies, they do not report it, it's something that is actionable now, which will lead to litigation, of course. What may be a problem for them is business for us. Now, what are we reporting actually in this? The E captures the energy efficiency, like how efficient are your resources, because for example, what we argue in Aptil is also what is the lifetime of this particular plant, is it beyond it, and that is how your advantages also keep reducing when you're asking money from the discoms. Then carbon footprints, this is something that is also rapidly gaining ground. Carbon trading, in 2022 the act was also amended to include the carbon adjustment mechanism in it. Greenhouse emissions, deforestation, biodiversity, climate change, pollution mitigation, waste management and water usage. The S covers the labour standards, wages, benefits, workplace, board diversity, racial justice, pay equity, human rights, talent management, and basically the social justice issues. The G covers corporate board composition, structure, strategic sustainable oversight, compliance, executive compensation, etc. There exist several reporting standards. For example, the Global Reporting Initiatives, GRI, these are more international in nature. There's SASB, there's IFRS, which provide the methodology guidance that how you're supposed to report, what are you supposed to report. GRI is generic in nature, however, SASB and IFRS are sector specific. Now, what do I mean by generic and sector specific? Generic reporting is something that any company can pick up. However, when we're doing sector specific, for example, there's a milk, like Amul and Mother Dairy, what are they expected to report? Apart from the generic propositions that exist that I just discussed, they'll also be asked to deliver upon what is your milk purity, how is your business affecting the livestock. I think cows is also something a very sensitive topic in India, so that is also something they're supposed to report upon. Now, when we come to a mining company, they will be focusing on overcast mine, undercast mine. These are the mining laws. Basically, the Mine Crutch Act is there, so they have to report according to those laws. This leads to differentiation in the compliance burden. So this is why sector-specific reporting is important. For example, a construction company, or an energy company, it's more compliance required because the business is more dangerous, I'd rather say, and it's more highly regulated nature of business. After the reporting, there are laws. the generic regulations in India, for instance, when we come to environment, there's the Forest Act, there's Water Pollution, Air Pollution Act, Biodiversity, Environment Protection, then Hazardous Waste Management rules. The social aspect is simply covered under labor laws and CSR. Governance aspect, we have the SEBI regulations, we have RBI, we have the company law, we have income tax, and we have PMLA laws also, and we have the PCA. Now, sector-specific regulations for mining, we have, for instance, we have the Mines Act, Mineral Conservation and Development Rules. For food industry, we have the Food Safety and Standards Act. However, across the globe, the ESG regulations are gaining ground with EU. The European Union is actually the torchbearer. For instance, they already have a taxonomy of their own, which was just announced in the budget this time, a couple of days, last week only, July 23rd, that India will also build its own taxonomy. Of course, the most prestigious lawyers will be taken on the board to devise the taxonomy. Then, European Union has Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation and Cross-Border Adjustment Mechanism. Cross-Border Adjustment Mechanism is something that is being debated worldwide, something which India will also raise at the World Trade, the WTO forum, to argue upon it, that this is not fair to us. Where basically what is happening in this is that if you are increasing certain emissions, like there are certain levels, and if you're crossing them, then your products cannot be imported into Europe. So that means we will lose a lot of market, and if we have to export our products, then we'll be paying a tax. This comes down to a very basic concept that Europe and US had a lot of time to evolve. They basically exploited the world, and now as us developing countries are developing, so where is this differentiated responsibility coming across from? Now US is also amending its present acts to include ESG. Now let's come to the most important question, that what is new if already these laws exist, and what would be the role of us, us lawyers? Firstly, we do not have a comprehensive code. We as lawyers will be expected to write one in the near future. Task forces are already in existence to take care of this. Now there's a reason I've called it futuristic, since ESG is at a stage of metamorphosis. Earlier we saw the growth and diversification of the disputes practice. We saw, the introduction. There was criminal, then there was civil, and now, it was this such rapid expansion with competition laws coming into force. Then we have NCLT, CRC, APTEL. Next, with the growth of the companies, we saw a different level or a different vertical of practice coming into being. We call it corporate. It includes mergers and acquisitions, fundraising, investment, project finance, and private equity. As we can see, with the growth of business, there came up laws. Laws gave birth to disputes and corporate law practice. The non-compliance with the corporate law leads to disputes, and to avoid litigation, the corporates hire lawyers to navigate the legal system under the head of compliance. So is the case with ESG. Beginning with reporting, though the Big Four are presently dominating this sector, but the ultimate assurance lies with the lawyers, since we have the holistic knowledge of laws. For instance, I was vetting a BRSR report for one of the top telecom companies in the nation, but they were stuck at some things like they don't know how to differentiate between employees and workers and contractors. Then, because ultimately the audit and accounting firms, they lack the expertise, the legal expertise to take care of the same. So this is where the lawyers come into being to navigate these nitty-gritties. Then they are not able to differentiate in certain things, like for example, there are scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 emissions. What will fall into what category? It is ultimately the lawyers who are going to take this call. Thus, there is a huge scope for ESG advisory. Next, when setting up a corporation, expanding, merging, or basically leveraging funds, venture capitalists and international companies, they require the Indian companies, be it a startup or be it a behemoth, they have to be ESG compliant. So ESG policies, decarbonization strategies, and aligning the companies with the existing laws and standards. This can only be done by the lawyers, since we have the knowledge of the same. For example, our firm had conducted an ESG due diligence of mines, smelters and refineries. These mines were owned and controlled by an Indian listed company, which was now to be acquired by a Canadian gold mining company. Furthermore, we conducted ESG and forensic due diligence of potential independent directors for a global auto manufacturing company as part of its recent IPO transaction. So the scope is unlimited. New ways of financing and investment, such as green, sustainable, transition, they're also cropping up, which expand the scope of corporate and regulatory practice. Now last and the most interesting scope is ESG litigation. Everything, I think, begins with the constitutional validity. The first question that's going to crop up is the future ESG code is it going to withstand the test of the constitutional validity? We already have corporate governance and we have corruption scandals, labor disputes, work accidents. These are going to multiply manifold times. So these are the disputes which we will see in a rampant scope rather than what we've seen. Like everything has had the time. Like we've seen partition in the 90s, then we've seen a lot of criminal is on the rise. We're seeing a lot of NCLT these days. So ESG is also going to occupy that place. Now new things will be added. For example, climate change litigation. There are plenty of cases across the globe which are already there, which are being adjudicated by the Supreme Court of various nations, such as the right to climate mitigation under Article 21 is something that we will have in future. Then reduction in GHG emission, human rights and government liability in mitigating and adapting to climate change. These days we can already see that Delhi is flooding. There was a case of 3 children drowning, 3 IS aspirants. So this is also something that ultimately the impact is of climate change. This is happening because such torrential rains not being spread over a month but in a couple of days, this is how it is giving birth to this. Next, since carbon emissions and greening of businesses has become the focus, there shall be disputes over methodology of calculation of emission. I think when we are arguing before APTEL, there are so many questions of how did we arrive at this basic liability, how did we arrive at this lifetime cycle. So these are one of the disputes that we will be arguing about. There is carbon tax, so I think ITAT will also expand its scope to include carbon taxation. Then greenwashing, but naturally, perhaps in the future greenwashing may be even included as a proper in the penal code, perhaps. It is an expectation since that will be one of the most rampant offences that are committed by the companies. Then we have the personal liability of directors, illegal channeling of funds. For example, you're acquiring funds for one purpose, that is transitioning to renewable energy. However, you're still using that money to buy the coal thermal plants. So that is going to be a punishable offence, something once again litigating in nature. ESG litigation shall give birth to another, basically we'll have another regulatory litigation aspect. Now thus I have an interest in ESG because working from the basic, I am gaining interest in it, I am gaining rampant knowledge about it, and by the time I hope I am designated a senior, I will have complete expertise in this domain, which will of course be booming in the decade and onward. Thank you so much, and now open to questions.
Thank you, Ramisha. So nice of you, the way in a quick short time, the way you gathered information and spoke. We are all very happy. This is our talent of young members, our Friday group. See how much talent she is getting. Hardly have 3 years.
5 years.
5 years. It's very good. Now I request, Geeta Varun will say note of thanks to.
Thank you, ma'am, for this insightful discussion, lighting presentation, and invaluable knowledge shared during this conference. Most importantly, you shared that how this ESG related with the company and how it can be evaluated. We never know, especially I was never knew this. And it offers the low SRI, CSR, and most importantly, you said that the lawyer help in maintenance the profit. So that's the most important thing. So thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
In environmental law, we have EIA, Environment Impact Assessment Report, and CSR, Section 135 Company Law, and other aspects, which we can say that it's a part of ESG. And you mentioned that for developing countries like India and other Asian countries and African countries, so there should be CBDR, common but different responsibility, differentiated responsibility. So so would there be different codes for ESG for litigation or for checking the compliance, or for example, and for environment we have NGT, National Green Tribunal. For corporate governance we have NCLT and CLAD, and for social labor laws we have tribunal. For ESG, would there be would those cases would be decided by these tribunals, or would there be a combined joint tribunal for ESGs?
Thank you very much for your question. I think this is something which is going to be decided by the lawmakers of our nation, that would they want to continue with the existing framework of codes, or would they want to abolish some and set up new. So that is exactly what's going to come down to. Speaking about compliance, SEBI at present is there. SEBI takes care of all the compliance requirements, and whatever the future holds, that I think we will see in the decade to come. Nothing is set in stone at the moment, since I said it's in the very beginning. Like just a few years ago in 2020, 2021, BRSR was introduced. Now it has been made mandatory. So there is a lot of scope. So I think in the beginning, these existing tribunals will adjudicate the new issues. Maybe NCLT, the scope of NCLT will be expanded to include ESG also, since it's something that is related to the corporates, as the company law board was also merged with NCLT. So maybe in the beginning, yes, and perhaps in the future we can have ESG specific tribunals when ESG as a code and a behemoth code as such may be set. Thank you.
You want to ask question? 1 second.
Good evening, ma'am. I have a very simple question. My name is Akansha. Ma'am, how can we make a career in ESG, ma'am?
So what I am doing initially, so these doors to ESG were opened by my mentor and my colleague Umang Pathak. She used to be principal associate at Cyril Amarchand and AZB. So basically right now we are, of course, reporting is there. Then we have to help them adjust to the laws, because like I said, something as simple as workers and employees is also not being understood, and this differentiation forms a major chunk of the ESG disclosures. How can you make a career in it? Is right now you have compliance, then we have also the corporate, like you have to help in leveraging of funds, then there's investment strategies, then decarbonization of a business, and slowly this will pave the way for litigation. So I think learning the literature and working on those aspects which exist and growing with those aspects is the thing. I think this just as you're a young lawyer just like me, so this is how slowly we have to take those baby steps from compliance till litigation. We have to see it all around. We will get to see it all actually. So yes.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Yes.
Yeah, please. Hit it.
There are two parts of the question. You have a corporate social responsibility where the corporates have been asked to take the care of social, maybe environment. Like that, individual social responsibility is a concept which is being discussed now. If you are in your individual capacity, are you aware and taking care of the social or environment, you are to be rewarded, and if you are doing something against it, you should be punished. So I just want to know what is the concept, what is the mechanism, and how to handle it. The other part of this question is this carbon credit. A poor man has a small plot, has got 4 trees. The country which has been asked to pay the carbon charges becomes a credit, and this poor man gets some money for owning and taking care of 4 trees. Concept is there. So what is the mechanism now, who is handling it, and how is to go, and what is this level up to which it will be?
Take that mic.
Thank you for your question, sir. Basically, when it comes to CSR, it is something that which the company can decide that, for example, Infosys did a laptop drive, you can do that, but it is very much limited in its scope. That, you just have to take 2% of your turnover profit and, just do anything. But when it comes to ESG aspect, it's much beyond CSR. You have to be responsible. You just don't have to, for the show of it, do something, but you have to take care of the society that you're living in. For example, stakeholder consultation becomes a major chunk of ESG. For example, when you're taking forward a project, a social impact assessment has to be conducted. If the people are against it, like for example, this majorly happens when their power plant has to be set up, and for example, now we are moving towards nuclear and hydrogens, how poisonous it can be. So all those things have to be ensured. You cannot just set up something and maybe take it consideration into the future. Those things which used to be done in later will have to precede all your steps before you do it. And yes, MCA is there for when you are filing your annual reports, your CSR expenditure comes into focus, but it is not much as relevant as it would be in the future with ESG into perspective. Like CSR is forming a small part of the annual reports, but people are now focusing on the ESG roadmaps. Yes, roadmaps are being constructed. India on a national level as a macro economy is also establishing its roadmap. Coming on to the next question of carbon credits. Yes, this thing that purchasing carbon credits when you're going overboard, this thing is what is European Union is also taking care of, that something that you are increasing your threshold, you're going beyond your threshold and you're just purchasing credits, so the emission gets balanced, but you should be taxed for that, and this transferability of carbon credits is what is to be stopped. When you have a plot of land, so basically I think it's going to be a carbon sink, because you have trees or you have plants and it's absorbing the carbon. So what we've also done is, like many corporations, what they do is, many startups have taken this out, that they're in sync with all these farmers. They enter into agreements with them, and so they agree that we will help you in your carbon trading, and they just take some portion about it. Like for example, as you've seen stock trading, there's a stock broker, there is company, there's you, and then there's a stock broker. So just imagine carbon trading is also working out when it comes to carbon sinks, that these carbon footprints are being purchased through these brokers, and they are helping in this process. And yes, we have Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change looking into it. We also have SEBI, and since a company aspect is involved, and that is how it is being done.
Asking what is the mechanism is now in place to monitor this and govern.
Carbon trading markets, voluntary carbon trading markets is what is there. It's once again, India is not that developed, so we just launched in 2022. The Environment Act was amended to include carbon trading, and now voluntary carbon markets have been set up. I think since July last year they have been functional, and that is where carbon trading is being regulated through. SEBI is there, business trading is there, and of course Environment Ministry has to be there since carbon sinks are involved.
Sir,
Yeah.
if I'm being
Yeah,
allowed,
please. Come to close. Ask question, please.
Yeah.
You take ask question.
Last question.
No, ask question.
Yes.
Ma'am, nice sort of the elaboration on this particular issues. A very good, commanding speech has been given out. One question is that, apart from the law, apart from the act, how a common man is going to have even a bit of the contribution for the elevation of the good sort of the healthy environment? Number one. Simply, I'm talking about the common man. And as being a lawyer, how much we will have to have the contribution with regard to elevation of the sound environment. And we all, being a lawyer, how we are going to have the very good sort of the contribution, apart from law I'm talking about. As being a lawyer, how we can contribute, how a layman can contribute for the elevation of the very good environment.
Thank you, Sanjeev.
Because the question should be at the grassroots level.
Thank you for your question, sir. Like I said, it involves stakeholder capitalism. Now, there is no shareholder capitalism in ESG, there is stakeholder capitalism. A consumer, a layman is a stakeholder. Firstly, how is the company going to raise funds? Like I said, there is ESG rating. So if they are not compliant with their laws, why will I invest? Ultimately, these large companies, they have their own, where do they get the funds from? The public. Every company comes with there and they do trading in shares.
No, I'm not talking about the company. Simply, my question is that, how a common man, even layman, can have the elevation of the sound sort of the environment, because that the social governance.
So how do we improve the social environment?
Yes.
Individual social responsibility.
Yes.
Okay.
A layman, a common man.
Question.
So I think
How
individual.
he's being aware with regard to his right, duty for the elevation of the environment,
Sir,
sound environment.
yes, social environment. If you speak about social environment, I think this is something that all of us while growing up have learned. Something that, okay, I'll not go into torch, but this is something that all of us while learning have, studied that, this is how you should behave in the society, this is how you should take care.
In my opinion, madam,
Yes.
at the school level, education, environmental education should be imparted.
It is imparted, sir. It is very much imparted. As I
We are having a
graduated
discussion
school
on
in
this particular issues. Rather, if the child is being given this particular education, then they can have much more strong impact on the social environment. Rather, we are discussing this issue inside the laboratory too. Am I wrong to say?
Not at all, sir. In fact, I just passed school in 2014. That is when that was my board year. So we had environmental education throughout our school years. We in business studies also we were taught the way social impact should be made. And
Despite the having so much legislation, enactment, acts, we are not
It is-
having the
that is because-
fruitful sort of the result.
So
with
that is
regard
be-
to having the sound environmental elevation.
exactly, because that, as you point out, it comes from the grassroots. That when the foundation of the child is being built,
Yes.
that is when they have to be taught all these concepts. So like I think legal education is now being included in schools to advise them that this is how the right and wrong. Then in law school also, like, and in fact in Delhi also, environmental studies has been made compulsory. So we are taught what to do, what not to do, how the system works, how you can contribute. So these are the aspects which I think major certain generations have missed, but our generation and the ones coming after us, they are receiving this education. So that if you can see that now the kids today, they're looking for, is this product cruelty free? Is this product sustainable? So when I go to the market, this is what I'm looking. For example, if you're going to H&M or something, then there are earrings which speak completely recyclable material. If I'm buying some blazer, for example, for coat, then I also look at it, is van use and sustainable. So I am willing to pay more. That is because this is the kind of awareness, thank you, awareness that I have, because that is the way we have been raised. This is the way our our education system has been. So yes, that of course helps improving the social and environment.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, Ramisha. So nice of you. You have given very patiently and very good answers.
Thank you so
More
much.
than expectations, honestly. The last minute, you have done full justice to our